Hello and welcome to AgPhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, sometimes in farming there are some difficult decisions to make. We're going to talk about evaluating early crop stands and then making that tough replant decision.
We also want to talk about soybeans today and some early post-residual herbicides that could really help your weed control this year.
You know, one of those weeds you're trying to knock out is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop it later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about frost. Hopefully, if you're a farmer, this isn't happening to you, but we want to talk through some of the decisions we make on the farm. And if you're a non-farmer, we just want you to understand what happens when there is a frost out in a field.
Well, what's interesting when we look at almost any field, whenever there's a light frost that hits, there's certain parts of the field that get hit worse, and then there's some fields that may be right across the road from each other where one field has a lot of damage and the one across the road does not. And people struggle on why is there damage here and not there.
Well, one of the things that can happen is in conventional till, so where there's more black soil as opposed to residue on top of the soil. Anyway, when there's more black soil, there's more heat that's coming up out of that soil, and that helps prevent frost. So we absolutely see more frost damage in no-till situations.
The other thing is when you look at low spots in the field or valleys in the field, that's oftentimes a spot where you're going to see colder temperatures, a little more humidity at certain times of the year, those kinds of things. And in the case of frost, we have more frost damage in those parts of the field. So if you've got that low-lying ground, that's the first place I would often go to look for frost damage.
Okay, if a farmer has a crop that's growing out there and it's below ground and it only gets to 32, 30, 28 degrees, there's no problem at all. But even if the farmer has crop that's in the ground, nothing above ground, and that temperature gets really low, let's say it gets to 16 degrees, it's possible that that frost could move all the way down and hurt a very young seedling that hasn't even emerged from the ground. That issue is very rare, but that can happen. What we're much more concerned about is if a crop gets up above the ground and then it has frost damage. But frost damage doesn't just occur in all plants at, say, 31 degrees. With some plants, they're sensitive at 28. Others are really sensitive at 24 or 26. It varies a lot. And what we're looking for most as farmers is how long was it cold and how cold did it actually get?
The other thing that's a challenge for farmers is they want to know right now. Hey, we had a frost last night. I want to go look at my field and see if it's going to make it or not, or see if I'm going to have some damage to my plants. But oftentimes it takes a few days after the frost for the effects to set in and to be able to see on plants what's going to live, what's going to die, and what was just, I'm suffering a little bit, but I'm going to come out of this.
Let's talk about how we're going to figure this out. What you want to do is wait a few days. With broadleaf plants, the growing points are going to be at the leaves. Okay, so everything is going to be above ground. Once you see the first leaves of a broadleaf plant above ground, all the growing points are now above ground. So you have to look at, hey, am I getting any regrowth or not? That's what we're looking for in the broadleaf plants. With the grass plants, we're going to split the plant in the middle and we're going to look inside, find the growing point. Is it alive or is it dead? But you're not going to find that out within 48 hours.
Now, these same rules hold true for farmers in their fields or for you in your garden or with plants around your landscape. So frost can be a big deal. There are a number of factors that play into what kind of survival rate there'll be from plants and how long that frost lasted and exactly how cold it went. But these are some of the things that farmers think about in the spring.
Well, one of the other things that farmers think about in the spring is weed control, especially if they've got our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to control it on your farm coming up later in the show.
We've got teams all over talking about low salt, micronutrient, high efficiency fertilizer teams like it's something new. What's your take?
I tell you, Don, AgroLiquid team has had these technologies for over 30 years.
And really unprecedented application versatility, compatibility, and ease of use. So they're your pick for the championship season?
You bet. Their full line nutrients is going to take them all the way to the root zone.
And now we have Jenny in the field talking with Farmer Dave.
Thanks, Don. Dave, after the impressive turnaround last year, what are your plans for the coming season?
Well, as you know, I changed teams mid-season last year. Now I know my AgriLiquid partners are ready to go to work. I'm completely happy with the performance and the level of dedication I get from AgriLiquid.
From the guys in the field?
Everyone at AgriLiquid. I believe AgriLiquid has me on the road to success.
There you have it, Don. Dave has a plan for another championship season with AgriLiquid.
They're my pick too. AgriLiquid's going all the way.
Ideal for herbicide applications, the ultra-low drifts large air-inducted droplets were designed to eliminate driftable fines without sacrificing coverage. Its thick three-dimensional pattern creates multiple angles for the spray to cover the target. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
What happens if you don't get your pre-emerge herbicide on for soybeans? Well, that really could be a bad day because there aren't a lot of great post-emerge options now that Roundup isn't working very well anymore. And sure, there's the new Xtend, there's Liberty, so we have some choices, but none of those things are perfect. So what we would suggest to you, if you didn't get the pre-emerge herbicide on, is go to Option 2, which would be use post-emerge residual herbicides.
Okay, let me first make a comment about Liberty and the new Xtend system. So with Liberty, there's no residual. So if you spray Liberty, you kill what's up. There could be another flush that comes next week, and you're not just going to run right back out there and spray another shot of Liberty in most cases. So you do need to have some residual control in a Liberty Link system. What about Xtend? There's been a lot of talk about the residual control that dicamba has, and there certainly is some. It's just not very much. Our dad always told us growing up that dicamba had about 2 weeks worth of residual, or until you got your first rain. So if you put dicamba out and a week later you get a really good rain, well, most of that residual could be gone. So you definitely need to have a residual in the dicamba program as well.
All right, the chemical family that most everybody's looking at for post-emerge residual is the Group 15 family. So you look at the Group 15s that are labeled for soybeans. You've got Warrant, which is basically just unsafened and watered down harness. You've got Outlook, you have Dual, and then also Zidua. So there are several choices there, but again, they're all in the same chemical family. And one of my concerns always gets to be, hey, if I just use it in corn, I'm gonna use it in corn again next year. Now this year you're telling me I should use a Group 15? I'd like to avoid it if I could, but if you didn't get your pre-emerge herbicide on, you're kind of stuck because most of the good pre's you can't use post. So you've got to use a Group 15.
So let's talk about what kind of weed control you can get out of those Group 15s, because as Brian said, they're popular products. We use them in corn all the time. But in corn, we're really focused on getting good grass control, and they certainly have excellent grass control and good residual with that grass control too. However, we don't talk often enough about the small-seeded broadleaf control. And when you look at full rates of those Group 15s, we actually do a pretty good job on a lot of the small-seeded broadleafs. However, when we're talking about post-emerge residual in soybeans, we're often talking about a half rate or even less of some of these Group 15s. So we don't have the strongest rate out there. So will we get small-seeded broadleaf control? Yes. Will we have it for the whole rest of the season? Will it be unbelievable? No, it's not going to be unbelievable, and we aren't going to kill the ones that are up. Yep. So just keep in mind it's going to be soil activity for a few weeks, and it's going to be pretty good but not great.
Yep, I would say you can probably expect maybe up to 4 weeks of residual and 50% control on small seeded broadleaves like Palmer pigweed, water hemp, kochia, that type of thing. That's it. We're not talking 95% control. We're not talking 3 months control. You're going to get some out of this, so it's better than nothing by far, but it's not fantastic. Okay, then you start looking at some of the other products. Flexstar or Famecifin, dirt cheap. That price has crashed in the last 3 years, so that's awesome. For $4, you can throw down a fairly decent rate. That's going to give you quite a bit of residual the rest of the summer. It's going to help on things like ragweed, Palmer pigweed, a little bit on kochia, black nightshade. So that's a good product to use, has decent residual, but you have to worry a little about the carryover.
Well, carryover is also a concern when we look at products like Pursuit or Raptor or Thunder. They've got some good soil residual, but they are all ALS herbicides, and many of the pigweeds out there are also ALS resistant. So choose those products if you have the right weed spectrum. So if you've got velvet leaf and you say, well, that's a big concern for me, or sunflowers are a big concern for me, or nightshade, or even wild buckwheat, yeah, we can do a good job on quite a few different weeds, just not the ALS resistant ones.
One other ALS product I'll bring up is First Rate. Excellent on non-ALS resistant ragweed. Also pretty good on things like cocklebur and sunflower and a number of other weeds too. So if you want to throw that in the mix, you can, but again, it's not going to kill the ALS resistant weeds.
The other question we get about these residuals is, when do I do it? Now, if you have a residual down and you're just looking to boost it, usually about a month window is pretty good. You can get about a month out of those early pre's, then you come back with that next one because it needs some rain to get activated, and it's not, in the case of the group 15s at least, not going to kill the emerged weeds. Now, if you're talking about, I don't have any residual out there at all, I'd say get it on as early as you possibly can in the season.
Yep, just check the label, spray really early. If you have nothing down, you want to get out there as quickly as possible, because I know that a lot of people talk about, oh, you can have 4-inch tall weeds and everything and it doesn't hurt your yield until then. I don't believe that at all, not at all. Sure, if there are 3 4-inch tall weeds, they're not going to hurt anything. But when you have 3 million in your field or even 3,000 in your field, you're probably losing a little bit of yield. So be on the early side. I'd much rather see you have early weed control as opposed to late.
Regardless of trait in soybeans, residual herbicides are key to stopping resistant weeds and a lot of the big yield robbing weeds that are out in your field. So if you didn't get a pre down before planting, get a residual out there now.
Well, which one of these residuals could help you on our Weed of the Week? We'll tell you coming up later in the show.
Take a look inside any rotary combine and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the axial flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
Side dressing nitrogen? Applying nitrogen over the row boosts nitrogen uptake and efficiency. 360 Y-Drop places nitrogen at the base of the plant, not like Coulter systems that put it down the center of the row. With Y-Drop, a small amount of moisture moves nitrogen into the root zone for rapid uptake. Getting more bushels out of your nitrogen investment is important. 360 Y-Drop lets you apply nitrogen later in the season so you know exactly how much N is needed to finish the crop strong. Learn more at 360yieldcenter.com.
One of the biggest yield limiting factors on farms is even crop emergence, and only one closing wheel will get your growing season started right. Furrow Cruiser spiked closing wheels from Copperhead Ag are proven to yield better than standard rubber tire and cast iron closing wheels in all conditions. With yield gains that give you a return on investment the first season, there's no reason to run a standard closing system again. Visit copperheadag.com today to get your 2017 growing season started right.
For lower costs, higher production, Mandico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mandico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit mandicoagri.com.
We love the quality, we love the construction. We're looking forward to working with Morton in the future.
They have this down to a science. They know exactly what you want. They know how to make it happen. It's an easy process.
I would definitely recommend Morton. From the first time I met the salesman to the last nail that the crew put in, it has been a positive and professional experience.
I'm so happy I found Morton because they just make the job so easy.
Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com.
We've got teams all over talking about low salt, micronutrient, high efficiency fertilizer teams like it's something new. What's your take?
I tell you, Don, AgRoLiquid team has had these technologies for over 30 years.
And really unprecedented application versatility, compatibility, and ease of use. So they're your pick for the championship season?
You bet. Their full line nutrients is going to take them all the way to the root zone.
They're my pick too. AgRoLiquid's going all the way.
When it comes to evaluating your stand and deciding whether or not you're going to replant, it's really tough. It's kind of a judgment call, and this is one of the things where we always say, look, if it is a real judgment call, it's not just black and white, probably better ask around, ask a few people, get their opinions. But we want to talk through a little bit with our opinions today on what your stand may look like and when you should pull the trigger on replanting corn or soybeans.
All right, first let's talk about evaluating the stand. When you're out looking at, let's just use corn for an example, and you say, I planted 30,000, I'm seeing 25,000. The most important thing for me right away is I want to see what happened to the other 5,000. I don't want to just assume what happened to it. I want to dig those seeds up and see what I find. It's interesting to me how this can really vary. Maybe there were birds out in your field, like pheasants, for example, that we see in our state, that a lot of times will go and pick corn seeds right out of the ground. Well, that's possible, and it could just be in a part of the field. It could be that you had some certain disease out there.
Try to figure out what went wrong so you can do something about it in the future. That's helped us a lot because now when we're going to plant early into cold soils, we're doing things like putting fungicide in there, insecticide, some fertilizer, a biological, and that's helped us overcome some of the problems we've had in the past.
The other thing is, keep in mind what your population that you put out there in the first place was. Like, for example, on our farm, we're varying population throughout the field, really in every one of our fields. So if you're looking at an area that was only 27,000 to start with, and there's another area in that field that's 36,000, they are going to look quite different. I've been out on calls with farmers that said, oh man, my stand is terrible. And when we get out there, it's like, wow, it's consistently 24,000 all throughout the field. And then the light bulb comes on. Oh, I forgot to adjust that. I was going to just do that in part of the field. So if you've got one of those things, or if you're varying the population throughout, make sure you know what the target is first.
All right, here's the big thing. This is the number one thing when I'm evaluating a stand. It has nothing to do with the stand. It has everything to do with the date. If I say, wow, I'm a month past my ideal planting date, then I say, you know what, I can accept a much worse stand. If I'm still pretty much in my ideal planting date and I had something go terribly awry, then that's a whole different discussion because now I have 100% of my yield potential left. So this is one of the great things too. Let's say it's hail, for example, that affects your stand. There are hail charts out there. There's been all kinds of work done on this for years. You can just look up on the internet Iowa State University hail charts, and it will tell you what you can expect for yield and at what point you should probably be thinking about replanting in corn or in soybeans.
And this makes a huge difference depending on where you're at in the country. For example, if you're up along the Canadian border, well, you've got a short growing season, and all of a sudden replanting corn may not be an option because you just don't have early enough corn.
That's exactly my point. It's how far away from the ideal planting date are you? And most of the time, quite frankly, my stand has to be awfully horrible before I'm going out replanting. Most of the time, I'm willing to accept a 70%, 80% stand, something like that. Yeah, I don't like it. I'm not saying that's ideal, but by the time I spend the money and take the time to replant, and don't forget, the plants that are left there, as long as they're good, you have 70% of the plants that could still get 100% of your yield potential. Now, if you're going to replant the whole field, you have 100% of your plants that could only get 80 or 90% of your yield potential. Are you any ahead? In most cases, no.
Okay, here's the other thing. Let's just say it's corn that you're having a replant situation, but you've got half a stand left. How do you get rid of the other half a stand? Now, if you're using the same trait package, for example, it's Roundup Ready, well, you can't just spray Roundup out there. That's not going to kill the ones that were out there from before. So people start talking about, well, what if I use something like Select Max to kill that
or
corn
Sure or Fusilade, but the problem is you've got roughly a 7-day plant back there. There's a tiny amount of residual in the soil, so you can't plant your seed right away. That's the problem. You can go out and wipe it out with tillage. That's usually our suggestion. Or you could use something like Liberty or Gramoxone, but a lot of times Liberty and Gramoxone only burn the plant to the ground. They may not kill the growing point. So going out and spraying to kill the corn, and you want to go in and plant the very next day, probably not going to be perfect.
All right, now when we look at something like soybeans, a lot of guys want to patch things in. They say, well, I've got 50,000 out there. I'm just going to throw another 75,000 plants out there. Now I've got plants of all varying sizes. And
you can get by with that in soybeans. You can't get by with that very well in corn, though.
Well, as you can see, replanting decisions and stand evaluations are not easy things.
Well, it's not, and like for Darren and me, we'll debate a little bit about this too. Again, for me, my threshold is a lot different than what Darren's is. Darren will say replant, and I'll say, nope, let's let it sit.
Well, this is why you need to talk with your neighbors, maybe even your brother occasionally, a crop insurance person. Get some good opinions about what to do, because chances are you're not the only one in your area facing these choices.
You're probably not the only one in your area facing our Weed of the Week either. We'll tell you how to control it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Weed of the Week is a winter annual. It's shepherd's purse.
It's one of those weeds that you see out there very early in the season. A lot of times people will say, well, I've got some pennycress in the field, but then they look a little closer and say, wait a minute, this is kind of different looking pennycress. Okay, well, it's not pennycress. You're looking at shepherd's purse.
So in a lot of cases, since it is a winter annual, by the time you want to plant your corn or plant your soybeans, you know what, the shepherd's purse is already big and you can wipe it out for the season just with a burn down. So tillage might do it for you. In a lot of cases, Roundup is just fine, Dicamba is fine, 2,4-D is fine. Most of the burn down products are going to be real good on shepherd's purse. It's just you have to understand that the weed's going to be relatively big, so you can't get by with some tiny little rate. It may take a higher rate because the plant has such size to it early in the season.
All right, so you can do fall treatments with residuals. They'll be excellent on shepherd's purse, but in season, since we're already in the spring here, in corn, I would start with Verdict down. I would come back over the top with Status.
In soybeans, we really like our 3 pre-program where we've got a yellow, metribuzin, and a PPO, either Valor or Authority. And then finally in wheat, I'd probably start with Sharpen and follow up post-emerge with Husky.
That's all the time we have for our Weed of the Week, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm, do it for them. Order now. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference.
You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
In life, when you put the max in, you get the max out. It's no different for your corn, which is why 40 years of effort have gone into proving that Instinct and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers do more than just stabilize nitrogen, they maximize nitrogen, so your corn gives you the max in return.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
We started utilizing the dual react system this year. You can adjust your speed and it automatically adjusts your sprayer tips. So you can slow down and you aren't building up huge droplets, or you can speed up and you're not throwing a mist that's drifting.
Hypro, helping you spray better.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Will my spray work differently in the morning versus the afternoon versus the evening? The answer is that it can and often does. We'll explain how to manage that in today's Iron Talk. On our farm, we're looking for a day that isn't windy, has no chance of rain, is sunny, warm, has all the crop and weeds growing actively, and falls in the middle of the week if possible. How many of those days do you actually get on your farm? We get 2 or 3 of them each year, the way it seems, and after that, we're searching for a few hours here and there that we can knock some acres out until the next couple of hours of suitable weather. Wind seems to be one of those things that's certainly a problem. Because of that, our operation, and likely yours as well, has been spraying many of the acres either early in the morning or later in the evenings. Now, there are a few challenges to watch out for. Today, we'll talk about moisture. Moisture is critical, and I'm not just speaking about the chance of rain. You also have to look at dew. If the plants are all dewy in the morning, you need to wait to spray until that dew is burned off. Otherwise, adding more water droplets to those already wet leaves will just cause all the moisture to either run off, or if not, your spray solution will be diluted that much more. The other thing, especially in the evenings, is that spraying too late in the day may cause the spray droplets not to dry onto the leaf, effectively making your rain-fast times much longer. In other words, your product is safe from rain if it's sprayed on 2 hours before a rain. But if you spray it at 9 p.m. and the humidity comes up, perhaps a dew sets in. Whatever the case, now you've just extended your time before your product is safe from rain until 10 a.m. the next morning. So check the forecast before spraying and be aware of any moisture that may impact your spray. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Closed captioning for AgPhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune in to the AgPhD radio show. You'll find us each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 147 at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next AgPhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching AgPhD.
Did you realize that a healthy soil only contains about 50% dirt? In order for the soil microbes and plants to work together properly, soil should contain 25% air and 25% water. Today's farming practices are designed around maintaining that healthy balance. To learn more, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.